you identify yourself? Is that Jill by chance?
Where don't you set big video? No, we don't have.
Jill is on the phone.
It's Jill. Yeah.
Jill. Okay, thank you. Hi, Jill.
Okay, I'm gonna go on mute because I'm driving.
No problem at all.
So you don't hear all that noise.
No problem. I just wanted to check that it was you. No problem.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
And I think
Can we go ahead
Nelson
and get started?
I think Nelson
Nelson's
joined
here
us too. Mm-hmm.
Great. Awesome. All right, let's get started, guys. Well,
right.
Thank you all for attending the March Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. This is our first virtual only meeting of the year, and I, for one, appreciate the ease in our schedule just for this month. We obviously will go back to in-person hybrid next month in April, back in the Government Center's second floor rooms, which will be exciting and fun and good. Today we have a shorter side agenda with some interesting topics, mostly for just group discussion. I'm going to use some of the excess time we have to get through some housekeeping items with everyone, but mainly want to use this to kind of open up some general discussion items. There are a few ideas of areas where we can provide either individual or PRC-wide perspectives, and so we want to use the time to cover things like that. So to start with, Marco, do you want to do the COVID things?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So again, good evening and welcome to the Parks and Recreation Commission. My name is Marco Rivero. I am the staff liaison to the PRC. I would like to remind all of our attendees that the PRC meeting will be recorded. We ask that commissioners, presenters, and attendees please mute your microphones and turn off your video feeds if you're not speaking. For those attending via telephone, you can mute and unmute your microphones by dialing *6. The top toolbar contains a raise your hand function in case a commission member or presenter has a question during the meeting. Commissioners and presenters may share their screens using the share content box, and the chat box will also be checked routinely, mainly to address logistical questions or issues during the meeting. As way of information, we'll also be holding a public comment period, but as I'm seeing our list of folks within the call, it doesn't seem like we have anyone from the public, but if we did, that person would be afforded 3 minutes to provide public comment, and I will provide a signal to the speaker once time is up. Thank you very much, and I will turn it back to Shruti.
Thank you, Marco. Great. We'll get to that public comment section. So let's start off with the approval of the meeting minutes. So we are approving both the January and February minutes since we didn't have a session just for PRC in the February meeting with the Sports Commission. So I think we had a very good discussion. I actually reviewed the notes from the Sports Commission a few times because there was a lot of letters and things like that going around this month. So yeah, I think that they were very valuable. If there aren't any changes, I'm going to go ahead and say that we can approve those minutes. So hearing no objection, let's go ahead and approve them then. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, public comment. Is there any public comment? It doesn't look like there is. Does anyone know if we're anticipating any? We have a lot of open discussions today, so I wasn't anticipating any.
I don't see anyone on public comment, but I do see Peter's hand is raised.
Go ahead, Peter.
Hi. Hi. I was wondering if we might be able to schedule a joint meeting with the Transportation Commission the way we did with the Sports Commission, since there's so much interplay between trails and parks. I would think it would be a very fruitful conversation about trails and parks between the two commissions that never,
Lovely idea. I like that. We have to build out, this is just the semantics of it. We have to build out our schedule for the whole calendar year in one go. And so getting the Sports Commission in early in the year was a request that actually came in from Mark around November. And so my proposal maybe to you, Peter, is to say, let's get in a joint Sports Commission meeting in February and potentially a joint Transportation Commission meeting, maybe around the SIP when we talk about capital improvement projects between trails as well, right? That might be a good moment to have it. So like early summer perhaps, and see if staff can arrange that. Marco, is that too ambitious plus a field trip?
I would have to get back to you on that, Shruti, honestly, because the Transportation Commission does function in a very different way from the Park and Recreation Commission in terms of how they convene. I believe they convene in the county boardroom as well. And also just from a logistics standpoint, I typically don't work with them specifically when it comes to organizing joint commission meetings. It would be a first. But it's not to say that it would not be possible. I would have to touch base with our transportation staff liaison or the Transportation Commission liaison to see what could be done. But I can't commit to anything right now, but I will look into it.
Let us know if we can help in your justification in the ask at all, because I do think if there are any other ideas around this topic, please feel free to raise your hand. And Peter, if you want to continue to elaborate too. But I think connecting it possibly to a SIP is a valuable nexus for us to talk about those topics in particular, and add in that transportation lens therefore to a potential letter that would be written.
Great.
And you know what, Shruti, now thinking about it, the CIP discussions for next year, I think those are actually going to start sometime in the fall. So that might be the time to do it, actually.
Okay. I like that. Let's try and connect it to that moment as a reason that this is a valuable joint meeting.
Shruti, this is Jill. Can you hear me?
Yes.
One other item of mutual concern is the WNOD trail, which is being studied, the expansion for which is being studied under the Transportation auspices, the Transportation Authority of Northern Virginia. So that's another reason.
Great. Do you know, Jill or Marco, if there's like perhaps a planning period that we should be aware of around WNOD management or expansion? I know that that's always a topic, but is there something coming up about it anytime soon?
That's a good question. I would have to look into that.
Okay, that's
a good
I don't
one know
too.
The timeline, but they're studying it now, and they're going to come up with a proposal.
What? This is called.
So it's not too soon to start talking about it, you know.
Totally. Yeah, Cole, go ahead.
The last time we left this was they need to submit a design, and they haven't finished the design, and I don't know what their design time frame is, but the last two sessions that the last session that we had with them, that was sort of the note that, remember, this is just a preliminary study. There's going to be a design coming out. And then when we have the design, we get to talk about it. Okay. So at any rate, I don't know what the time frame is, but that's the next step.
Perhaps we can get an update on that timeline of design phases. Yeah. Okay. Great. Good suggestion, Peter. Thank you. All right. Sorry. Let's move on. Okay. Not hearing any public comment, we're going to move to our first agenda item and our only real agenda item today, which is actually a placeholder that I kept in from, I think, January now, that Peter actually brought to us, but I think is something that, like, if we wanted to bring in any additional information, perhaps we could get this topic started on the Marymount University projects. I think it's also valid, if we're open to it, to discuss missing middle, since we didn't really have a foot in the field on that specifically, but now that it's, in play, it does affect what we do. And I think it only personally increases our need for advocacy at SPRCs and long-range planning commission meetings and things like that, where matching density to a biophilic city is going to become increasingly more important, right? So raise hands if you guys have any points that you wanted to raise about, just like current events really in the PRC space, and you wanted to bring up a point on it. Yeah. Any thoughts on these topics? Okay, cool. Cool. Go ahead, please.
Colt, you might be on mute.
Thank you. One of the things that we talked about in terms of our letter was staffing at the nature centers and longer range, finding out that really nothing is being done on design. It's design and reconstruction of that in the CIP for 10 years out. And we need to move that up a bit. So when we do get to CIP, we should certainly focus on monies for nature centers. And I know Taka's talked about how we might need to reformulate and think about what a nature center is and how it should function, but we didn't get much direction on that, and I wasn't clear on what that meant. At any rate, I still, they do need help, and in the short term, we really need to continue to push for 6-day-a-week staffing.
We have a lot of background of support on that from a public opinion side as well. You know, I know Duke Banks really brought this issue to our commission, in my opinion, and has been spear leading it from like the Gulf Branch side and the Civ Fed side. And the county manager has not supported that vision. And I agree with you that we need to really get that in place for this next cycle too. Something to bring up if we do begin that planning in fall, as Marco's saying.
When we testified, you could see that several council members, I was getting some head shakes, but later on I found that no, generally they're not going to support it. So I don't know which way they're going to go, but I was disappointed to hear that it didn't sound like support was available.
Agreed. Thank you. Yeah, Colt represented us at the board meeting on discussing the Parks and Recreation part of the budget, and read our letter out, and sat through and listened to our other sister commissions in the Parks and Recreation umbrella. So thank you, Colt, for doing that also, but gives us some flavor as to like the attitudes that we're facing when we send these comments.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything? If not, no big deal, no problem. I just wanted to provide a space here to talk about some of these current things, and yeah, raise any concerns that there may be going forward.
Well, Shruti, when you talk about Marymount, I don't think we know that much about it. I was assuming somebody was going to tell us about what they were thinking, but we don't have somebody from Marymount here. Or
no, and Peter, it still stands, and that is the topic, right? That like Jane told us at the sports commission meeting, I believe too, that we don't have any details on it at this point because they haven't submitted anything. So it feels like a ghost tactic now, like they were like taunting us with something evil and now they're not following through with it, in my opinion. Just to be candid here, I don't know what's going on there. It feels like we have to be on the defensive a little bit.
On the offensive?
I would like to be on the offensive, but we are waiting for them. That's what feels scary about it.
Well, one thing that I've been saying for a long time for the offensive would be some kind of statement about the vision for Quincy Park. I mean, there's two different Marymount things, and I don't know anything about the soccer field, but the vision for Quincy Park in the long term would be to have it be more of an urban park and less of a recreation center, and somehow making a statement that not only are we not really open to the idea of somebody else coming in and using the field, but actually that field over the long term should stop being a single use, manicured baseball field, but should be more of a multi-use space for a city park or something like that. That would be a way of going on the offensive, shooting a cannonball across their bow before they even come in with a plan, saying that our long-term vision for this park is de-recreationalizing it.
I hear you.
Totally, but somewhat.
It's not really in the position of our government to do that, though, and tell them what to do and not do, like as a mandate. And so I understand the position of not being able to be offensive. I feel like then there becomes a local play of like asserting that opinion as much as we can in public spaces. I don't know how we do that, but I feel like we don't have enough on this topic to really know what to do next.
But I didn't understand what you said when you said it's not in the position or the culture or something of our local government to do what?
To decree that institution can or cannot do something offensively.
No,
right? They haven't submitted anything here to say, like, I don't know who's going to write that position here, Peter, publicly here. And it certainly couldn't be our commission. Like, we don't have any public voice, right? We speak to the county board.
Yeah, to the county board. Not talking to the county board. But theoretically, and I don't even know if the commission, this is probably not a unanimous view of the commission itself, but that we would have a motion that the commission write a letter saying it's the long-term view of the Park and Recreation Commission that Quincy Park should become more of an urban park with urban amenities. And less of a suburban recreation park, and that's the recommendation that we make to the county board, without talking about Marymount or anything else. Just saying that's our vision. So that if Marymount comes in and comes with an offer for making a baseball stadium or something like that, we're already on record saying that's not our vision for this park.
I'd like to open up other voices to this conversation too. Mark, do you want to chime in on this topic?
Yeah, sure. Currently Quincy is the baseball field isn't really a baseball field. It's a multi-use field right now. Its primary use during the spring is the baseball field for Washington Liberty High School.
Yeah.
But the outfield fence is removable, and it is the last decent grass soccer field in the county and the only lighted soccer field in the north of the county.
Yeah.
So it does get use for that purpose. And the space between the baseball field and the library is used a lot for the local volleyball clubs to play outdoors. So
it's also used by youth baseball.
And Marymount's plan was to keep that sort of multi-use. However, they're going to cover the whole thing with artificial turf, which I'm not a happy camper about that. I don't believe that covering all of these spaces with artificial turf is a great idea. But I'm definitely in the sports community's minority on that subject. So there's no way to lose the baseball field as it stands right now. And I've spoken to APS, and one of the sticking points that's going to come up with the Marymount project is priority of usage. APS has made it very clear that regardless of whether Marymount puts up money for these fields, which I've talked to Marymount, they don't have the money right now. So that's to be determined. They have no funding for doing these projects at the moment. But APS has made it very clear to Marymount that regardless of how this plays out as far as the development of the softball field at WNL and the baseball field at Quincy, that those two facilities will still remain APS priority facilities. And I see that as going to be a problem because Marymount's looking to put up the money for these facilities and then get priority use, and APS is not going to allow that. So that's going to be a huge point.
That's very interesting. I don't think those are the only two problems. I think a very big problem is that this park is in the middle of thousands of people in apartments and houses. It's one of the densest parts of the county. It's a potentially beautiful central park for Arlington, and it doesn't even have a decent bench to sit down on. You know, if you want to sit down, you sit on bleachers or picnic tables. The whole thing is way out of. It's from the 50s, and Boston is from the 2010s. You know, so it's not just a question of APS and Marymount. It's a question of Quincy Park in relation to Boston, Virginia Square, and the Central Library and everything else, in my opinion.
Well, but you can't get rid of the baseball field. So, I mean, in theory, you might be able to get rid of the softball field. The softball field was originally the primary location for WNL to play high school softball games. It's no longer used for that because they built the stadium on the campus. So that softball field is now only used for recreational softball in the county. In theory, you could redevelop that corner of the park and get rid of that field. However, when that's come up, for instance, at Virginia Highlands, there's been a lot of friction between both the park and open space community in Aurora Highlands and the sports community over the softball fields in that area. So yeah. I don't know if that would even be a topic for discussion, but the baseball field is at this point non-negotiable because you have to have some place for WNL to play, and there's no other place for them to play.
Can I call on Adam to join the conversation as well?
Yeah, just, I mean, I was going to make a point similar to Mark's, but ultimately, you can't go with a strategy that says we can't have recreation here, because in order to do that, you would have to find another place to have that recreation. And if there is a viable place in the area to do that, then you can make that proposal. But short of that, I mean, you can't just say get rid of this recreation space because we want to have a city park. I'm not in opposition to the idea of Quincy Park being a city park, but it has to be in the context of the fact that we also have an extremely tight situation regarding recreational space. I mean, I can tell you that the ultimate Frisbee team for WNL practices on the Quincy 3 diamond outfield. That's how tight things are in that area regarding recreation space. There needs to be a more comprehensive look at if you're gonna be reserving certain spaces for non-recreation use, you're gonna need to find a place to have the recreation. I guess the bottom line where it comes down to.
Thank you, Adam. And Gretchen, I see your hand is raised as well. If you want to comment as well, please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I think this discussion gets a little bit too, like Takis has brought up in my conversation with him. Do we spread things around the county the way they seem to have kind of grown up organically with playgrounds and amenities and sports? Or do we try to kind of make these nodes and concentrate functions in certain locations? Peter, with your idea of like a central park kind of idea, I understand lots of people live around there. I wonder if if we should focus along the really sensitive like creeks that run into the Potomac and all of those, fingers of sensitive like ecosystems along like those corridors of there's some greenland and park, but really focusing on adding in trees where we can and maintaining where we can, really in those sensitive ecosystems that lead to the Potomac and along the Potomac. And anyway, that's all.
Okay, I mean, of course, there's a lot of great ideas. Very few people live along Stream Valley parks. The Stream Valley parks were already nice ecological sites that a small number of rich people with big houses live alongside. But you've got thousands of people in apartments with not even a yard and not even a balcony right around Quincy, and that's the kind of place that that really benefits from a park.
Peter, I implore you that if you really do feel engaged by this issue and you want to gain PRC support for it, this doesn't seem to be an agenda item that has any sort of timeline. If you'd like to draft a letter and we can work together and find an editorial committee for that letter, game, let's do it. But
okay, I'll give it a shot. I realize it's super controversial.
We would need to gain full PRC approval for it. It would need to be something we definitely went upon in the democratic process that we want to go upon. Yeah,
of course.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, feel free. I love that idea. Awesome. Any other thoughts on Marymount, Missing Middle, the budget, tax season? Anything else?
Judy,
I have a question.
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, go ahead.
Jill?
Should I go ahead? This is Jill.
Yes. Yes.
With regard to Missing Middle, I mean, I do take Peter's point that we already have more density than have parks for. And I don't think the solution is to take away the recreation facilities, because those are very much in demand by, among other people, those that live in apartments. But I do think we should have we should probably put aside some time to really discuss and think, and maybe even get some expert consultants to help us understand what is feasible, right, in terms of increasing access to park space in such a dense environment. So I just wanted to say that with respect to Missing Middle. And then, since I've got the phone and I don't want to interrupt too often, I'll also say that I really liked Mark's idea about putting the pickleball courts on the roof of that other building that used to have the tennis courts on it. So
we'll touch on that later.
Strategies like that are like things that we need to like think creatively and come up with new ideas. Okay, I'm here, but I'm going on mute. Thank you.
No worries, Jill. No worries, Jill. I honestly, so just to back up that last point that Jill just said, Mark sent around an email about topography on pickleball courts. Mark, if you haven't already, please pass that on to the Sports Commission. They wrote a letter or are writing a letter on pickleball as a specific topic. And I'd like to support that letter as much as possible with our good points. So yeah, I agree with you, Jill, and I agree with you, Mark. Thank you for bringing that to this meeting. Yeah. Neil, if you want to go next.
Yeah, so actually, I think we can table this to later if it doesn't fit in with other, planned topics of discussion. But I wanted to see if there's been any kind of like statements made about like what plans the county has for the Key Bridge Marriott, just due to like the status of it right now. And I think there's just kind of a general movement of sentiment to get something set up where the county, claims that land and that property. And wanted to see if there's any knowledge about what that looks like yet.
We did have an SPRC on that, right? Or was it a long range planning committee? Marco, do you remember?
Yeah, there was an SPRC site plan process for that project. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I sat on it actually.
Yeah, and there was quite a bit of development. Oh, Nia's on there if she can
Please,
speak to
Nia,
that.
tell us.
I can shed some light on that. How is everybody tonight? So from the Planning Commission, so I ended up by default chairing that. It was approved by the county board, gosh, I don't know, 3 years ago. In a meeting that we had with Anthony Fusarelli and about the whole planning team, we asked about it, and apparently whoever purchased either part of it or some of it is in foreclosure or something, and they have been getting approvals, I guess, through the governor's office or something for extensions. So right now, and unfortunately, it just has to sit. Certainly if I find out or hear anything about it, I can let you know, Shruti, but that was what we were told maybe about a month ago. And so we're assuming, at least staff at that time said that we were assuming that they would apply for another extension or whatever. So,
Thank you, Nia. That's great information. I'm looking at the webpage now.
Yeah.
Neil, did you have any specific questions that maybe Nia can answer?
I wouldn't say anything specific. I just, it's been in the news again over the last couple of days. So I think with its salience and the potential, I don't know how potential there is for the county to take some action about like eminent domain or anything like that. But it's just kind of something I'm kind of like keeping in mind as far as like, potential new parkland in the county, if that does come to fruition.
That would be a wild property. That would be an insane property. But yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Peter, if you wanted to go next.
Well, Nia, what exactly came out of that SPRC meeting? Is there any public land and parkland coming out of it?
Well, the way that the plan was approved by the county after it ended, we started with a GLUP, then we did the LRPC, then we did the SPRC, and the way it was left, and again, it's up in the air now, where the parking lot is currently, as you're heading over to DC, that would be 2 cylindrical tall towers, very Miami Beach looking things, and those were supposed to be condos for sale. Then the hotel was supposed to lose something on the backside and just be kind of renovated a little bit. It would stay Marriott, but Marriott no longer owns it. Marriott was leasing the name or allowing the name to happen there. Behind that, closer to the river, there was going to be a plaza behind the hotel, and then, I wouldn't say park, but certainly an open space, a very large open space was planned. There was even talk about, and unfortunately, from what I was told, Capital Parks and Planning or National Park Service, which basically it backs to that. Many of us know that there are trees there with massive vines all over them. That, even if we as a group volunteered to go remove vines or cut them, that we, and apparently we didn't hear a whole lot from NPS on that. But in the meantime, then further down where the parking garage currently is, or I should say further up the hill, there was going to be like 20 stories added of rentals there. So it was a very ambitious project. All along the backside, so meaning along the riverside, was, nice with bike paths and trails and all kinds of things. But again, it's sitting. So now I did ask, because a lot of times a specific property or something, even if it's sold, the site plan stays with it. But the impression I got from staff was if another buyer comes in, not necessarily. Now, maybe that is because they could propose something else. I don't know.
Something better, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes. So it'll be interesting to see. It is kind of odd to have a piece of property there that's kind of a gateway to us. That's just kind of sitting there with a fence on it, which is why we asked about it. But that was the latest that we were told. And again, if I hear any other update, I'm happy to pass it on.
Okay. But from the perspective of our commission, it seems like there's virtually no park and recreation land involved in this.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was like about the pedestrian thoroughfare and creating pedestrian walkways that incorporated the hotel and its kind of design into the existing urban landscape more than anything. And we were focused on things like natural planters, bird-friendly glass, you know, the standard enviro things as opposed to green space and open space elements.
Yeah, and I will say too that project, sadly, that's a project that I refer all developers to, because when a planning commissioner chairs a site plan or a proposed development project, we always meet before it goes to the next level, meaning, you know, commissions and stuff are involved. Usually the chair meets with staff with the applicant. And in all of those meetings, I have always pointed to the Marriott as, especially the biophilia that they finally added in the end. It was probably one of the most amazing presentations I've ever seen on it in conjunction with a development. They really went all out with that. So, and of course, those are still out online for people to look at, but I was very impressed, and some of my colleagues who are very, very much involved on a professional planning basis and biophilia, and even writing some of the county, you know, standards on biophilia, it's still the one that I point applicants to for other projects to take a look at, to try to do at least that or something along the lines of that, because they really went all out after we talked to them about that. So that was impressive.
Thank you. Yeah.
And they're supposed to be tearing down the overhead walkways over to Gateway Park, you know, sometime.
Yep.
Which will improve the sort of environment of that.
Excuse me, Trudy, can you ask Neil, what was it in the news? I remember seeing something too, something about the county condemning it or something. Am I remembering that right? What was the news article?
I think
that's correct.
Yes, I saw that they were condemning the building and it was coming down, right? Is that up to date?
I think that tracks. Yeah, I didn't read about a tear down. I know they at least officially condemned it in their process of securing the building, but I don't know if there's any word on whether or not it's going to be coming down.
So I think, isn't condemning the step before they can claim it or something? I have to do our legal research.
Yeah. Did anyone else have their hand up? I thought someone else had their hand up. I don't want to forget anyone. All right, golden. Well, thank you guys for a good discussion. I think we have a few outcomes out of here. It was good to catch up on some of those items. The rest of the meeting is a couple of to-dos, again, housekeeping items, updates for you guys, really. Starting with the staff report. And Marco was going to bring up Bluemont Park in that, and a email we got from Dr. Bernard Byrne on butterfly preservation, I guess, in habitat management in Bluemont Park. And really, Jill, Marco, if you could speak to the staff report, my bad. And then Jill, if you wanted to start that discussion, that would be great.
So thank you, Shruti. So in terms of the staff report update, this was not part of the collective staff reports that was provided last week, but we did receive from staff that the engagement 3, there was an engagement, a public engagement opportunity for the Bluemont Park project that is uploaded now on the project page. It contains the most up-to-date Upper Bluemont Park conceptual design. Public input for that design will be open through, I believe it's April 20th. And the design team has begun 30% construction drawings on that project as well. So there is still opportunity for the public to submit comments related to that project. And I think a lot of that may be also part of maybe Dr. Burns' request for additional comments related to that butterfly garden area or space that he was referring to. And I can hand it over to Jill so she can speak more to that.
Thanks. I'm sorry, there's a big truck going by. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I didn't have a chance to verify everything in Dr. Burns' letter, but it rings true. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention in case either you want to write a letter yourself, or if we decide we want to write a letter collectively. It turns out Dr. Byrne has been raising monarch butterflies since he was a child. So he does really feel passionately about them. And apparently there are two monarch way stations, they're called, at Bluemont Park. But only one of them is slated for preservation under the plans that are before the public now. So he's requesting, among other things that I don't know much about, but he's requesting that the county give attention and preserve both of those way stations. I'm sure I'm not the only one who knows that the monarch butterfly population has decreased by about half or more since the 1970s. And it seems a small thing to make sure that we maintain milkweed and the other plants that they need. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about it, because it wasn't on my radar screen. And so that's all I have on that.
I'm on mute. Sorry. Thank you, Jill. Thank you for elaborating on that. Yes, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate Dr. Byrne, as always, for writing in on those kinds of topics for us, bringing some light to that. Great. And were there any other topics in the staff report we wanted to cover? I don't think so, right?
No, not at this time.
Okay, moving to commissioner member reports. I'm going to do two things. I want to call on a few people just to talk a little bit about some upcoming stuff, and I'll kind of explain a little bit. And then we'll fill some vacancies today too, if possible. So we can talk. I'll do some Googling while we're talking and look up first meeting dates of some of these things, and we can try and fill some of these vacancies that we have. So starting off with, I wanted to see if Sarah, if you would be down to give us a quick overview on where we're at on the Silver Diner project. For some context, in our April meeting, we will be getting a presentation from staff on this project. So I'd love, Sarah, if you could just give us like the 50-foot view that you've been experiencing on the SPRC, so that we can go into that meeting with a point of view a little bit. And there is a public space component to it. So Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, this is in the western end of the Clarendon neighborhood, the intersection of, I don't even remember what the streets are, but it's that huge intersection that's like 4 intersections smushed together, basically, where the Silver Diner used to be, but it's moved to Ballston. And there's a street called Irving Street, which is just south of, the busy transportation heavy intersection that actually dead ends. It doesn't connect all the way through. And the northern end of Irving Street was determined during the Clarendon sector plan update process to become an open space, used to be determined through a public park planning process at some point in the future. Since it's county right of way, it's not used for any type of transportation purposes, a very easy target to convert that into some type of open space and combine it with existing bike ped infrastructure in that part of the street network. And there's already some like benches and open seating over there and some bioswales and things like that. And all of the blocks along Irving Street have been turning over quickly through the SPRC process, basically since the sector plan was finalized. There's the Joyce Motors parcel all the way to the south, and the Wells Fargo parcel all the way at the north, and then kind of diagonal is the Silver Diner Bingham Center parcel, which is like 2 triangular pieces together. It's not, a traditional block shape because the Joyce Motors parcel is in the southeastern corner, and they're putting in new streets to kind of redivide the block up in a different way. So it's a bit of a tricky process because, talking about the sidewalk and street design and building design leading up to this new open space is 3 different SPRCs from 3 different applicants, moving on 3 different timelines for 3 very different buildings. And I'm on 2 of them. I think Adam is on the 3rd. So, it's been quite the process to work through this public planning process with the applicants. And I think the Silver Diner one is, actually, I think Wells Fargo is the furthest behind. But Wells Fargo and Silver Diner are the 2 that are actually next to the open space. And so at the Silver Diner meeting last week, we were talking about the open space components of the design on the SPRC agenda. And currently and these documents are all posted on the SPRC website, and I encourage you all to take a look at the drawings if you have more interest. But basically the frontage of the building kind of leading up to this park and on Irving Street is going to be mostly back of house operations for a hotel restaurant, including a loading dock and staff entrance, and it's currently not meeting the county's transparency requirements. It's also not meeting the vision set in the sector plan for Irving Street as a new desire path for pedestrians in Clarendon with this new park at the northern end. We're talking like close to Northside Social, close to the new ribbon park that's going in the parking space area next to Northside Social. So this is going to be quite an interesting and vibrant area. And so this like critical, it's silly, it's just 1 block, but this like really critical block for pedestrian access, it matters a lot. And the applicant design is not really, meeting the county objectives or the vision of the SPRC at this point. Of a particular sticking point was the loading dock location. It's like right next to the park, basically. So as you can imagine, that could be quite disruptive and potentially unsafe for people using that public space. And there is also a lot of discussion about appropriate building uses next to the open space. So those are kind of the 2 big issues in my mind that are worth talking about and hearing about from the applicant, because most of the SPRC meeting feedback centered around those 2 topics. And this is going to be our park. This is our jurisdiction. So it seemed like a great part in the process to ask for a presentation at PRC and to provide.
And will this one, I don't know if you know, am I on mute? No, I don't know if you know this, Sarah, but do you know if this will also go through its separate park planning process?
It will.
Okay, awesome.
But so, something the applicant was advocating for as part of their benefits package was they would support like construction of the park concurrent with building construction. So, I mean, and Marco can speak more to this probably, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but I think that would be a faster timeline to the park planning process, or it would start sooner than it would otherwise because the applicant wanted to have the park built at the time the hotel opened.
Awesome.
Yeah, Sarah, that was my understanding as well when I was speaking to staff about how the timeline could potentially work. I think that is the case.
Great. These are good points. We have a lot of criticisms. Let's remember that as a possible nice thing to say in our letter coming up. Yeah, so speaking to that, but I'll get to you, Colt, and anyone else, please raise your hand if you have questions for Sarah, if you're okay taking them at this point. So we'll be getting a presentation from staff at our April meeting, and I assume that means that they're going to be going quite quickly to the board right after that. So it would be great, Sarah, if you wanted to pass around something at or around our next meeting, and we can identify that editorial team at our next meeting, of course. Yeah, so you have some time, and if there are any opinions that you want to raise for Sarah, now is your time too. Colt, please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Sarah. Sarah, that was an excellent presentation and overview. And I think it really hits on some of what our responsibilities are or where we can wedge ourselves in. We haven't been very successful in urging the county to buy more land. We haven't been very successful in Arlington County itself to grow more and get beyond its 26 square miles. So we're not getting any more green space in Arlington. And unless they're going to, and they haven't been buying it. It's efforts like this that are thoughtful, and we take it one step at a time, one pocket park at a time, to give ourselves as much green space as we can. And thank you, all of you, for working together on that piece. And that's where we can really make a difference in these little parcels, one at a time. We'd love to take a big chunk, but anyway, thank you very much for that.
Agreed. Big ups to Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, not to reopen a closed conversation, but going back to earlier comments about, Quincy Park and needs of people who live in multifamily housing. I live in multifamily housing in Courthouse, and something I try to stress in these SPRCs is, for people like me, sidewalks and streets are my open space sometimes, right? And so a pleasant walking experience is almost as important to me as, green space access. And, having nice architecture and, pleasant street frontages to walk along is really critical, as well as, emphasizing the integration and connectivity between all of the little pocket parks. Clarendon and Courthouse are building quite a nice network of little spaces here and there, but if I have to walk along empty lots to get from one to the other, like, that's not enjoyable to me. And if I have to walk past loading docks and, ATM queues, which is the debate at the Wells Fargo site, like, that's also not appealing. So, pushing for that I think biophilic design is, the integration of your built environment with your natural one. And I see SPRCs and these conversations about pedestrian experiences as a really great focal point for that.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Great. And just to add in, Adam, if you wanted to speak to the elements that may be in conjunction here with this site. I know Sarah mentioned that. I just want to give you space too, if there was any connections here that you may want to bring in. Maybe like we should talk about that as part of the letter writing process, like considering other areas are developing close by, the emphasis on this park is just higher,
I actually don't have anything to report on that because I have not received any notices about meetings on the on the site. So as Sarah alluded to, they're behind schedule or behind. So I haven't. Sarah, I don't know if you've seen anything, but I haven't seen anything on that.
No worries. Perhaps we just make that point that there's other developments happening, to generally. Great. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Cool. All right, we're going to move to filling some vacancies, if that's okay, guys. And I'm really happy Nia's here because one of them is actually going to be on her. Marco, to me, it looks like the Melwood property GLEP study is over since it's been adopted in, I think it was the end of last year. But if we could skip that for right now, and if I'm wrong on that, we could maybe find representation next time. I know that was one of Kevin's, but I think it's over. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was saying that I can reconfirm that. If that is the case, I can remove it from the agenda.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. And then looking at the Red Roof Inn, we don't have an SPRC date for that, but I saw, Nia, you're the Planning Commission member in charge of that SPRC. Do you have any insider info, or could you on the spot maybe talk to the potential green space, public space, or natural elements that we may need to consider there?
Well, I will be chairing that, yes. Now, I have not yet met with the applicant, so I haven't really reviewed anything that they're proposing at this point in time. So at the moment, I have not seen anything about that. So, and nothing right now is even scheduled. So as soon as I find out something, I can certainly shoot you, an email if you want. Because I always, it's always interesting. And again, in these processes, having done them first as a civic association president and then as a planning commissioner, almost every time from what you see at the beginning, at the end, it may not be 1,000% different, but it has been enhanced by everyone's comments, including this commission. So, but I'll let you know, I have not seen anything about it yet. I was told, hey, I'm in charge of it. We will be arranging a meeting with the applicant. And I definitely, when I get a chance to meet with the applicant, and my colleagues do the same thing, we have our own internal list of everything that most of us as plan commissioners are going to expect to hear from them, in addition to other commissions that are going to be sitting at the table at the SPRC and some of the expectations. So open space is always one of the ones that
on
we
the
talk
table.
about. Oh,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I saw Peter wrote a comment in the chat, but yeah, it's located, guys, on 50 near Fort Myer, just past Fort Myer, kind of like adjacent to the Key Marriott. So you can think of it as a series of hotel projects that are happening in that area even. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of info on that one, but that's the neighborhood. To give you some context.
If I do find out that there is a tentative plan somewhere that, you know, can be shared, I certainly will share that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So that's one of them, guys. And then the second one is the Sunrise South Glebe, which is in Alcova. I don't think we have an SPRC date yet for that, but that planning page is live right now with, you know, the land use topics, presentations from staff already laid out. That's, you know, a senior living facility that is going to be taking over a previously church area, I believe. We heard a little bit about this earlier last year. So yes, it's a rezoning situation, and then there will also be a use case there of like the neighbors that are being brought in. Thank you. Marco also just is posting that project page in the chat as well. So I'm making a call for volunteers for either of those two projects. If anyone would like to volunteer now, ask questions to Nia or Marco about those projects. We need to get both of them filled by the 30th. So I'd like to really get it done during this meeting, and I will pressure you. This is an opportunity for folks who haven't yet tried an SPRC to get your feet a little bit wet in it. I think this is one of our best ways of being impactful. So if you haven't signed up for one before, I would highly suggest it.
Shruti, this is Jill. I'll do the senior living one.
Thank you, Jill. Anyone interested in the Red Line Inn?
I'll be happy to do that. This is Adam.
Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Awesome. I think those are two good ones coming up. We start to see SPRCs, they tend to be scheduled throughout the year, but taper out. And so I appreciate all of you for volunteering on all these ones that are coming up. Planning Commission's also getting great at telling us about them in advance so that we can identify folks. So thank you for being good participants in this process. I really do appreciate it. Okay. All right. I am good on our commissioner report. Unless there are any other questions, I'm going to move us to other business, if that's okay. So we talked about two potential letters today. One, Peter will be spearheading potentially on Quincy Park. Another one that Sarah will be spearleading on Silver Diner, that we will probably look to publish in the month of April, soon after our next meeting. I think that's it. If there are any other ideas for letters, please do let me know. But I think that's it for right now. I also want to talk a little bit, second item is a little misleading. I want to give the update that we've been looking and interviewing, Jill and I, many candidates for the 3 open positions we have right now on our commission. So we have 15 folks that are 15 seats available, and right now we have 12 filled by us. And we have selected 2 candidates who will be meeting with Taucus. I see that one of them is on right now, actually, Nelson, which is very exciting. We're excited to have 2 new folks join us on this commission and join in our diversity of opinions and great discussion. How that factors into the Bill Thomas Award logistics, I first just want to say, Melissa, we're looking to have you lead the Bill Thomas Award this year, as you've been diligently following up on it, and have both those 2 members potentially join you as part of the party planning and logistics and award ceremonies. This year's Bill Thomas Award is going to be a big, good, exciting one. We're going to be celebrating the awardees from the last 3 years, since we didn't get to celebrate in person during the pandemic, which is very exciting, very fun. And so it'll be great to have, a couple extra folks to help out with that. Marco, please, you're going to give the details of it. I don't want to misspeak.
No, thank you so much, Trudy. So, yes, so we are really excited to begin the process of nominations for the Bill Thomas Awards for this year. I believe our communications department has updated the Bill Thomas Award nomination form on the website. It will be open, I believe, till the end of April. I believe the exact date is April 28th. However, there's more information, I think, to come from them regarding how we'll be pushing that message along in terms of email blasts, updates, website updates, things like that. How we communicate that with the various community groups and things like that. So we'll keep you all updated, especially Melissa and the two new PRC members who will be working on this effort. And also, as Shruti mentioned, we will also be organizing a in-person reception as well as recognition, not only for the 2022 award, but for also the awardees of the 2020 and 2021 awards. So this is going to be a larger effort, and we'll keep you updated in terms of when all of that will happen and when we have it scheduled with the county board and when we'll be ready to move forward with those recognitions.
It may be, we'll talk about this later, but it may be valuable. I think in the past when we used to do them, they'd be like the hour before our meeting, perhaps, like the party itself was an hour before a meeting. That might be a good idea to continue that tradition if we can, depending on how it coincides with board meetings as well. So yeah. Anything there? Any questions about that, guys? Golden. All right. Okay, we're going to end quite early today. Just mentioning that our April meeting will be in person at the Government Center in room 216. If you remember the old Government Center, it's a beautiful building. Guys, it looks great. But if you remember the old Government Center, the second floor is like DMV and stuff like that. Our room 216 is all the way at the end of the building. And in the evening, you can only access the second floor through the elevators. So I suggest you park in the garage in the basement because you'll have to take the elevator either way and walk all the way down that hallway to the very, very end is 216. And yeah, any questions about our next meeting? Marco, please. Yeah.
Shruti, I think there was one quick topic related to pickleball that I think needed some clarity.
The one on Mark's letter, or
yes.
Mark's,
mm-hmm.
We kind of briefly talked about that during that session, but Mark, I highly suggest that we get that idea to the sports commission if it's not already been.
Well, it's already been,
okay.
And there's some history with this, and I've been on this suggestion for years. Steve Finn and I talked about it a few years ago, and I brought it to DPR, and they basically rejected it out of hand because of the fact that the tennis courts that used to exist on top of that reservoir were shut down specifically because there was a concern about safety of the county water supply. I still think it should be investigated because we've got obviously a need for the space, and the space is there. And you could definitely put it there if you looked at risk mitigation. I still think it could be done, and it's just been sort of ignored. That space has been decommissioned now for, might be coming up on 30 years. And the other thing, I talked to some people at the Sports Commission, and the concern if you put pickleball in that space, how is the neighborhood going to take that? And again, given that you're on top of a concrete structure, you know, they do manufacture sound barriers for these type of courts, and rather than fencing the courts, they could look at doing something like that to mitigate the sound problem that they have at Walter Reed. So I think there's a lot of options for that one, but I think honestly, I think that if we're really on board with this, it might behoove us to have the PRC write a letter ourselves. The other thing that came up regarding pickleball, and I don't know, I haven't spoken recently to APS about this, but I could talk to Debbie DeFranco about this. The old tennis courts and basketball court that used to exist behind Williamsburg, they were taken away to put trailers on top of them. Then the trailers were removed when Dorothy Ham opened up, and the APS has not issued any sort of plan on what to do with that space. Now it just sits there fallow. It's not being used for anything, and that's another space that could potentially be used. You could probably put 8 pickleball courts on that space as well.
We have to get more creative with that. I'm open to a pickleball letter too, if you'd like to make one, Mark. I was hoping we could get some synergies on the sports commission, but there's no reason not. We're not meeting any sort of like natural pickleball conversation at the board, so it's at our own discretion to write it whenever we want.
I mean, the sports commission meeting last Thursday was really short. The only thing they did discuss was about pickleball, but they didn't really come to any consensus about it. So I don't know what they're planning to do about that. So I'm not really sure. They don't seem to move quickly these days with issuing letters.
Yeah.
They're still sitting on, unfortunately, they're still sitting on the Combating Hate in Sports working group. That working group completed its work 9 months ago, and they still have yet to issue a letter of any consequence to the sports leagues or the county board on the results of that work. So I'm not really sure what's going on there either.
Happy to pick up where we can. I mean, we hit on recreation. These are topics that public is bringing to us. We can echo them.
Yeah, and right now, Miners Hill Park and that space is just, you know, except for the concrete structure, is just a small space that people mostly walk their dogs through and things like that. So
we should get a community engagement cycle, but it could be a better location.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And there
Peter,
is
did you want to add? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There is lighting. The electrical for the lighting is still there as well. So
could be recycled.
Yeah.
Peter, go ahead.
I love the idea. I love the idea. I think it's a great idea. I think we should maybe set up a committee to promote it, and if we need to have detailed conversations with the water department about, you know, whatever they're claiming as riskiness to the water supply, I think we should be in on those. I know of at least one. I know of at least 2 other facilities like this. One in Seattle and one in Wilmington, Delaware, where they put a park on top of a of a functioning reservoir, and it's a great solution, particularly in a county like ours that's so tight for space. I think it's great, and I don't know how the sports commission fits in. I don't know if the sports commission is even a relevant issue.
It's a good nexus issue for us, honestly. So yeah, let's add that to the list, Mark. If you'd like to compile some of your thoughts.
I'll work with you on the letter if you'd like.
Let's do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Any other opinions or conversation points on this topic before we adjourn for the evening? All right. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you very much for a good meeting today, and we will see you in person in April. Yeah, reach out if you need anything.
Thank you, Shruti.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jill
Bye.
driving.
Yeah, thank you, Jill.
Thanks, guys. Bye.